Last year, the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, issued a public health advisory saying that loneliness, isolation, and lack of connection is currently the greatest threat to our mental, physical, and social well-being. I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. Each week on this podcast, a different topic, discussion, or story from our lives.
Season 11, Chapter 11.
Epidemic
of Loneliness.
It appears that all of our genius has brought us to this. All of our technical wizardry, all of the zeros and ones, the silicon chips meant to connect us, have instead sentenced us to a life of solitary confinement in an artificial virtual world, and it's down at the end of Lonely Street. 1 in 2 Americans report feelings of loneliness. Not much better in Canada, where 40% of the population reports feeling lonely some or all of the time. Is it young people? Old people? Single people living alone? Yes, and yes. But it has gone far beyond just the usual suspects. It's an epidemic. Pandemic, really, because it's across all developed countries. Loneliness. Why is it a problem? Well, 1, because it's loneliness, and also because related feelings of isolation and disconnection increase risks of heart failure, strokes, dementia, anxiety, insomnia, weakened immune systems, and depression. Yeah, you have a nice day now. And when you become lonely, usually 3 things happen. 1, it can be exhausting. 2, self-doubt sets in. I'm lonely because I'm not likable. And 3, hypervigilance, where you can begin to suspect anyone who may be trying to reach out to you. In all of these cases, you close yourself off even more. The loneliness grows. That's why the lonely who sometimes get out among us may be hard to spot. We may not think of them as lonely, but rather aloof. They don't like talking to people. They're snobbish. They're on their own. Or they're angry. Hey, maybe they're just going through loneliness. As the old saying goes, and it's one of my favorites, we know the what, but we don't always know the why. The word is dysphoria. Dysphoria. A state of uneasiness, a general dissatisfaction with life. Half of the population is dysphoric because we're lonely. The United States has a 3-digit helpline, 988, if your mental health issues begin to overwhelm you. It took Canada a bit longer, but it now has a 988 line as well. My smartphone has made me so lonely, I guess I should phone someone. Every expert in this field has at one point or another cited the irony of the world of connectivity. Instead of connection, there's isolation, separation, and division. It's part of the problem, they say. But I say, and it doesn't take an expert to realize this, it's the whole problem. Yeah, I'm looking at you, connectivity. You're the virus that caused this epidemic. The good news is, there's a cure. Speaking of viruses, some will argue that it was COVID that caused all of this isolation and loneliness. Not really. Surgeon General Dr. Murthy said that COVID just lifted the curtain on a problem that already existed because of technology. The problem was there, he added, but it was being cultivated by our culture of connectivity. The home computer as a common household item has been around about 30 years. Google about 25 years. Facebook 20. The smartphone, at least as we know it today, about 15 years. Here's another relevant stat. The world median age is 30. That means that half of the population is over 30, half is under. Half of the people on the planet have never known a world that isn't connected and in your pocket. I'm over 30. A lot of this wizardry still occasionally feels new to me. New, but marvelous. I try and stay proficient. But still, every once in a while, I'm so impressed by the know-how that I can't help thinking, boy, in my day, but for the other half of the world, this is just the way it is, always was. We're connected, and anything slower than instant is too slow. And now we have this problem. We're lonely. We finally realized that for these past 15 to 30 years, we haven't really been talking to people. We haven't really made new connections, that we're actually at least once removed from authentic human contact. As soon as you put a screen between you and me, our contact is not real. It's virtual. Definition of virtual? Almost real. So, it's not that we have to stop the advancement of technology, even if we could do that. What we have to do is reinvigorate the importance of human contact. In 1986, Hands Across America, remember this? It was an attempt to raise funds and awareness for human hunger and homelessness. Organizers wanted a chain of people holding hands to form one line across the entire contiguous United States. Some gaps were reported, but it almost worked. Today, well, it's much tougher to hold someone's hand when there's a phone in it. I'm somewhat surprised, yet somehow not, that despite all of the warnings about what technology is doing to the human condition, that it still rolls forward at an ever-increasing pace. Here's the routine. You have these people over here who say, we can build this, and then we have these people over there who say, yeah, just because we can doesn't mean we should. Should we? And while we're having this discussion, do you know what those people over here are doing? They're already building it anyway. Yeah, hey, Oppenheimer, appreciate your concerns, duly noted, but we need a bomb right now. Last year, there were about 1,100 high-tech signatories, big players, who posted an open letter requesting that all AI tabs take a pause for about 6 months until we understand the consequences of this new artificial intelligence. Did anything actually pause? Not a chance. Remember the board of directors at OpenAI? OpenAI, the inventors of ChatGPT? They wanted to slow down on the new tech. The CEO was fired. Then employees revolted. Microsoft exerted their pressure. Board members were out. CEO rehired, full speed ahead. You snowflakes keep having your little debate. We'll be in the desert blowing shit up. Let me say again, we're not going to stop it. So what we have to do is increase our person-to-person experiences. Growing up, I had read and reread a book by futurist Alvin Toffler. His most famous book was Future Shock. Future Shock. Came out in 1970. Can you believe it? 1970. Ooh, it's the future. I'm frightened. Future shock was this psychological state of an individual or a society based on dealing with a quickly changing world. 1970. So at this point in the 21st century, we no longer call it future shock. We call it loneliness. I'll never forget one of Toffler's theories, that every human invention was intended to make our life easier in one way or the other. Free up our time. Time for what? Well, time for each other. Time for us to be more human. I embraced that idea. Still do, really. Any machine or device that allows us to be more human, that should be a good thing. We'll be more human. My question is, when will that start? The human evolution is supposed to be based upon the premise that we rely upon each other. That's how the human race moves forward. Instead, when it comes to our tech toys, we're like fast food junkies. We keep shoveling it in, even though we know it's bad for us. I watched this interview recently with a very excited young entrepreneur billionaire in England. His name is Mustafa Suliman. He sees the future of AI as everyone's personal assistant. Not just, Alexa, play me some jazz, but hey, assistant, I'm going to San Francisco next Tuesday. Book me a return flight, my Uber, my hotel room, 2 dinner reservations, and find me a good book to read on the plane. You know what I like. In that scenario alone, how many human interactions did San Francisco guy just avoid? By the way, the new Google Assistant doesn't even have a human name. I guess they dropped that illusion. They just called it Google Assistant. So I'm watching this, and even the interviewer is all excited about the possibilities. And I'm sitting there thinking, is anybody trying to initiate more human contact instead of less? And you're saving the San Francisco guy all of this time. What is he going to do with it? Will he be more human? Or will he just be playing Zookeeper Battle on his iPhone? Remember the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix? 2013. It's about a guy who abandons human contact for an AI voice, Scarlett Johansson.
What's it like to be alive in that room right now?
I wish I could put my arms around you. Wish I could touch you.
How would you touch me?
Spike Jones conceived of that idea after reading an article in the year 2000 about AI chat room capability. The software is 23 years better, and also the old blow-up sex doll is now a very lifelike robot. People.
I will never understand people.
They're the worst.
And don't get me started on the apps. They're just moving fast and furious. I use Rinse to do my laundry. Homoglow cleans my house. Rocket Money manages my budget. With Paycom, I can do my own payroll. Hey, and any one of these apps will deliver groceries. And some of the groceries can be all chopped up and pre-portioned for a recipe, so I don't have to do that. Or I can just order ready-made food. It goes on and on. Why should you spend time thinking and doing and interacting when this app will do it for you? Not only can you avoid dealing with people, but doing anything adult for yourself. The app will do it. Just tap. We are apping and tapping ourselves into an early, lonely grave.
This is for all the lonely people.
And before you argue that these apps are wonderful and that technology can do amazing things, even save lives, yes, of course it can. I'm not going all Luddite Amish on you here. After all, AI gave us a new Beatles song. I'm just saying the byproducts of this are isolation and loneliness, and from that, bad things can happen. Oh, and here's one more. Polarization. Tech is where that comes from. Sure, it's a stereotype, but let's face it, it's just become too easy to sit alone in your parents' basement, forming your own little fringe tribe of like-minded weirdos. To recap, we have created all of these environments where human interaction is irrelevant to the functioning of an organization without realizing there'd be a consequence, a big one. Speaking of organizations, by the way, forced human interaction, like meetings and staff bowling night, nice try, but they don't really count. It's like you've started this huge wildfire, and now you're standing there with a garden hose. A lot of very knowledgeable people have written books about this lately. No coincidence, they've all become bestsellers. People are searching for an answer. The big disconnect, alone together. The big sort, bowling alone, coming apart. Oh, it's a long list. One of the books that really caught my attention was called How to Know a Person by David Brooks. And this divides this issue into its second part. Part one is, of course, we're disconnected in a human sense. we're isolated, we're lonely, and increasingly we're lacking in adulting skills, which include the social ones. Part 2, if the answer to this is more human contact, well, how do we do that? Some of us are out of practice. Many of us never learned it in the first place. How do we get more out of each and every human contact? That's where how to know a person comes in. Look, not only is technology making it easier for us not to have human contact, but society itself, sometimes due to economic efficiencies, have cut back on the opportunities to have contact. It's self-serve now, self-checkout. Hey, even I stopped talking to my cashier. I check out my own items now. Well, come to think of it, we never had great conversations anyway. I guess that was my fault. Cold enough for you? The machines, the tech. You call an 800 number, and you never actually have to talk to a person. If you go to live help chat online, it's likely an AI bot. Cities are closing down things like community centers and libraries and other places where people gathered with other people. Oh, I know there's still something called networking, which is getting together with other people, but you want to network? Oh, sure, yeah. When? Send me the Zoom link. In my day, if you wanted to know something like, say, how old is Robert Redford? You had to think, gee, who do I know that likes Robert Redford? Oh, Sheila. Hey, Sheila, it's Larry. How are you? Really? When? Well, that's great. Me? Well, and you had a conversation. You don't have to do that anymore for anything. Why call Sheila? Why call anyone? Why go to a library, which is probably closed anyway? It's a missed opportunity for human contact. Robert Redford is 87, 88, this coming August 18th. Maybe I'll give him a call. Less need for human contact and less opportunity. So if we finally get to it, how do we maximize it? How to know a person? Because this fact remains. All of this is up to you and me. No app solves this problem. You and I do. Not only human contact, but better conversations. Better conversations with people you meet, even the familiar strangers. In his book, David Brooks talks about two types of people, the illuminators and diminishers. Illuminators find out about you. Diminishers discount your story so that they can tell theirs. We all know these people. We can be these people. We can be an illuminator or a diminisher, depending on how we feel, depending on the day. What does he mean by diminishers? Well, here's a situation. You meet someone you know, they say, how are you? You say, how am I? Oh, I don't know. I was just stuck in traffic for an hour for no reason at all. And they say, oh, I know what you mean. Just last week, I was stuck in traffic for an hour and a half. I was late for work. I got called into the office. Had a big argument with my manager. We're still barely talking. Oh, I see. We're talking about you now. I thought you were asking me about me. But it was just an excuse for you to talk about you. I don't even think a lot of people do that on purpose. It's just they don't know how to have a proper conversation. Don't be a diminisher. Brooks shares a great story in the book. I've actually heard it before. It's about a young woman in England many years ago named Jenny Jerome. Jenny Jerome would go on to become Lady Jeanette Spencer Randolph Churchill, and she'd have a son named Winston. But as a young single heiress and socialite, she was at two different dinners about a week apart, and she sat next to William Gladstone and then the next time Benjamin Disraeli. At the time, Gladstone and Disraeli were competing for the position of UK Prime Minister. A journalist noticed this and asked Jenny about the experience of sitting next to each. She famously said, "When I left the dining room after sitting next to Gladstone, I thought he was the cleverest man in England. But when I sat next to Disraeli, I left feeling that I was the cleverest woman. Gladstone showed her his stuff. Disraeli got her to talk about her." Here's the 4 steps Brooks recommends. Ask better questions. Really listen. Be vulnerable. and make other people feel known. Better questions. Yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
Now, you may not always want to get the entire story from the high school kid who's passing you your double-double at the drive-thru window, even though it might be a great story. But just in general, for human contact, better questions, better conversations. And more human contact will mean less time to be on the tech. It's the tech that's causing the loneliness. You know, back in the day, I used to see the packed parking lots at the mall, and I would rail against conspicuous consumerism. But these days I think, at least back then, we were out walking around amongst each other. Okay, it was the mall, but at least we had a better chance at some human interaction, as opposed to sitting on the couch now watching TikTok videos waiting for the Amazon guy to deliver the thing that I thought I needed. In the final season of Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David has this great summation speech where he says, "I did the best under the circumstances as a person who hates people, yet had to be among them." Yeah, we all have a little Larry David in us, a little antisocial, or just times when we want to be alone. But no one wants to be lonely. And today, so many of us are. We won't stop the tech, but we can end the epidemic. It'll be like the opposite of COVID. It'll be less isolation, less distancing, although probably more hand-washing. We can't rely on government to fix this problem, although they can help. We can't rely on corporate, although they can help. We can't rely on big pharma, because we already have enough mood-altering pills out there. This one is us. We rely on each other. We can help. Reach out. Make that call to set up that coffee. Ask better questions. And let's make each other feel known.
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.